Hi, Patriot Smoothie back on day 12 of the trial of Tamara, Lich and Chris Barber. Today we can expect the finale, maybe, of Tim Ayotte's testimony. Tim Ayotte, of course, the General Director for the City of Ottawa for Emergency Services and Preparedness. He has been testifying over the last 2 days, and today we'll finish up with the cross-examination, hopefully by Greenspun and then maybe later Magus, and see what that could reveal. But we learned a few things yesterday. Before we dive into this, got a little bit of a summary here. It's a little bit big, but we'll do what we can. If you appreciate the work that's being done here, if you appreciate this, please consider sending an e-transfer to the address below, realpatriotsmoothie@protonmail.com. It helps so much, and thanks again, as always, for your views, for your likes, your shares, your comments, everywhere, wherever you're watching. It's important. Thank you for helping getting this information out. So the thing to remember about Ayotte is that a lot of the things that he was doing in all of this evidence is very observational, but he does have some specific information. We went over a little bit of that, specifically some questions around these so-called recon walks. Of course, at the POEC, he testified he only ever took one walk. Now we're hearing that there could be as many as 3. I expect maybe we'll hear more about that today on cross-examination. We learned, of course, yesterday that there was no communication between himself and Tamara Lich ever at any point, but there was some communication with him and Chris Barber, some productive communication talking about the moving of trucks, asking for updates, saying things like if you need any kind of help, let him know, that he could move barriers. But then Chris did respond at one point saying that there was some problems, but it was with police, and that Tim Ayotte unfortunately was not able to help with that because I guess they had a different operational plan and they were not moving some of their vehicles to allow the trucks to come out, is what I believe was expressed in those text messages between Barber and Ayotte. So then we moved on to Greenspun's testimony, cross-examination, and that we got a few things out of that. We know that the city knows that the handling of the protest fell within entirely the jurisdiction of the Ottawa Police Service. Everything from ticketing to ticketing trucks, to towing trucks, to enforcing bylaws like noise or honking or idling or even fire safety, that's all under the direction of OPS. And we also learned that this is standard procedure for all protests over a certain size. In fact, the court asked if there's a specific procedure and what size, and I believe Ayotte said something like if it's more than 10 people, then the control of those things will fall to the police service. So that we know that he went on some walks and he described the honking and the idling of the trucks. We know that he took some notes, but the notes just up in the air where they are. They weren't in court on the first day, which was a big problem. Yesterday there was the copy of his notes provided by the Crown to him. That is missing some stuff still. Greenspun frustrated during his cross-examination a little bit with that. We continue here. Now, Tim Ayotte claims that there was relentless honking throughout the entirety of Freedom Convoy 2022, despite him being present at a high-level meeting with federal officials, specifically Rod Stewart, on the 13th of February, I believe, where Rod Stewart annotated that the honking had stopped, and that Greenspun actually asked Ayotte if he has any notes to the contrary of this, or does he have any reason to basically disagree with that position, and he doesn't. So which is it? And he also can't tell what time on the 13th he swore his affidavit for the city's injunction. So a lot of timeline missing here and a lot of confusion, basically. Let's go through here. So another interesting quote was that Greenspun asked if protesters were required to get a permit to protest in the city of Ottawa, and of course they're not. Greenspun mentioned the charter, and interesting, during POEC, Ayotte testified that people, are not required to have a permit to testify because that's a constitutionally protected freedom, and of course it is. But back in court today, he said his answer to that question was, "I'm not a lawyer," so I don't know. That's the kind of thing we're hearing in the courtroom. He's not a lawyer. And then another interesting point is that Ayotte maintains the position that the city anticipated this to be a 2-day event, despite credible intelligence from the Hotel Association, among other places, that people were booking extended stays to be in here 30 plus days. And he said, well, I don't know about that. The official intelligence we got from police was it was a 2-day event, blah, blah, blah. But, Greenspun asked him, did the police at any time ever come back about this intelligence from the Hotel Association and say, no, that's not credible information? And to the testimony, no, they never did come out and say that was not credible. So basically, Greenspun was trying to walk through that. They knew this was going to be longer than a 2-day event. Also, Greenspun mentioning something in court that I say a lot, which is that freedom and rights have no time limit. He mentioning that there's no time limit on a demonstration and the scrum, outside. that was mentioned by Greenspan outside in the scrum, that freedom has no time limit, that these charter rights have no time limit, that your right to protest is your right to protest. And then he also maintained in that scrum that these rights are constitutionally protected, whereas the rights to property are not mentioned in the Canadian Constitution. Greenspan alleges, okay. So again, all of this back and forth about this intelligence, a big matter, and as well, there's also this thing about Ayotte claiming he has no idea about the so-called police traffic plan. This traffic plan basically directing trucks into the city of Ottawa, which streets they will take to get to their parking spots, the so-called assembly areas downtown, Wellington, SGEM, wherever, coming, depending on where they're coming from, whether they're coming from the 5, whether they're coming from the 174 to the west, or whether they're coming from the 417 west to east. And the police laid out where they would go and how they would get there. And Tim Ayotte maintains in court that he only knew the routes. He didn't know about the parking plan. He didn't know about the so-called traffic plan. He didn't know about that. That's interesting. We'll find out more about that today. But he didn't know about that despite being at all of these meetings with these various officials, police officials, liaising constantly, being like one of the main contacts, if not the main contact for the city, and liaising with the police and the management of this, being in charge of fire and paramedic and so on. Everything but police, Tim Ayotte's in charge of in Ottawa. So it's really hard to understand how that could be the case. These meetings, they're called the, what were they called there? Intersect meetings, where they had over 125 people present at this meeting, and he's still claiming he has no knowledge of the traffic plan. In fact, he says he only found out formally about it at POEC. That's what we're hearing in court. Stay tuned all day for updates on Patriot Smoothie.